You know the sound. That sharp metallic snap of a lever-action rifle. It echoes through 100 westerns, a sound so familiar it feels carved into America's memory. John Wayne carried one. Chuck Connors spun one. Steve McQueen sawed one off and wore it like a pistol. Hollywood told us the Winchester won the West. But here's the truth. When the smoke cleared from the Civil War, the company didn't even exist yet. Winchester was founded in 1866, a year after Appomattox. So how did a rifle that arrived late to the frontier become the rifle that would capture the heart of a nation? That sound, the Winchester's lever snapping shut, wasn't just history. It was heritage. It was the sound of justice, courage, and a promise that the American people wanted to believe in. I'm Rowan, and this is OTRA Legends. Let's get into it. The movie that built the myth. In 1950, Winchester 73 hit the silver screen. It wasn't just another Western, it was the one that turned a rifle into a legend. James Stewart had just come home from World War II. He wasn't the same soft-spoken hero audiences remembered. He'd flown combat missions over Europe, and the war had changed him. When he picked up that Winchester on screen, it felt different, heavier, more personal. The story followed a single rifle, a rare 1 of 1,000 model 1873, as it passed from hand to hand across the frontier. Outlaw, soldier, Indian trader, gunslinger. Each life touched by it, each story ending the same way, with a trigger pull. Hollywood turned that rifle into destiny. What most moviegoers didn't know was that the 1 of 1,000 rifles were real. In the 1870s, Winchester actually tested every model 1873 for accuracy, engraving the best of them for sale at a premium price. Only about 130 were ever made, a clever bit of 19th century marketing long forgotten until Hollywood resurrected it. The timing couldn't have been better. Post-war America was looking for reminders of courage and craftsmanship, proof that toughness still lived at its core. And Winchester 73 delivered. By the time the credits rolled, the company didn't have to advertise a thing. Hollywood had done it for them. Audiences left believing Winchester wasn't just a gun, it was the gun. The one that tamed the wilderness, even if history said otherwise. Hollywood didn't just sell tickets, it sold a legend. But it didn't stay on the big screen. It came home, into every living room in America. Enter the Rifleman. It was when Hollywood brought the Winchester home. Then television took over. In 1958, the Rifleman hit American living rooms, 168 episodes, 5 years, one unforgettable sound. Chuck Connors firing 12 rounds in 5 seconds flat. That rifle wasn't historical. It was Hollywood engineering. The oversized lever loop was made for spectacle. It let Connors spin-cock the Winchester midair, one-handed. Real cowboys never did this. It was impractical, inaccurate, and completely mesmerizing. But it looked right. The rhythm, the recoil, the flash, all pure frontier fantasy. Accuracy didn't matter. Speed mattered. Style mattered. Every kid watching learned that justice came with a lever action and lightning reflexes. Soon, toy makers joined the show. Hebley sold official Rifleman sets. Mattel Toys flooded store shelves with shiny carbines. Christmas 1960 sounded like a shootout in every living room. But the Rifleman wasn't just about shooting, it was about raising a son. Each episode ended with Lucas McQueen teaching his boy Mark what it meant to live right, hard work, honesty, courage, and when necessary, standing your ground with a Winchester. Fathers and sons watched together, and somewhere between the commercials, the rifle became more than a prop. It became a bond, a symbol of strength, guidance, and the quiet duty to protect what's yours. By the early 60s, Winchester wasn't just part of the West, it was the West. A fixture of childhood, a piece of American identity. And as that generation grew up, another face stepped in to show them what that rifle looked like. in the hands of a hero. While sons were learning about heroes on television, fathers were learning about them from someone larger than life. Enter John Wayne and the weapon that built a man. For 3 decades, he was the frontier incarnate. In nearly every film, Stagecoach, Red River, True Grit, he carried a Winchester 1892 carbine. Not a Sharps, not a Spencer, always a Winchester. When Wayne held that rifle, it wasn't about aim, it was about authority. He moved with it like it belonged to him, as natural as his stride, as steady as his voice. In Stagecoach, 1939, he spun it one-handed, the move that would become his signature. Director John Ford knew the way a man handled his rifle, said everything about who he was. Confident, calm, deadly when he had to be. A decade later, in Red River, Wayne had hardened into Tom Dunson, a cattle baron who built an empire at gunpoint. His Winchester was never far. It was the symbol of control, a tool to enforce order and claim the land. Here the rifle wasn't about justice anymore, it was about power. And by True Grit in 1969, both man and legend were aging. Rooster Cogburn, one-eyed, fearless, charging 4 outlaws with reins in his teeth, Winchester in one hand, pistol in the other. It was absurd. It was glorious. And it was pure American ideology. That scene became an ending, not just for a movie, but for an era. The old hero riding one last time into the sunset, rifle blazing. For 30 years, Wayne and Winchester were inseparable, the man and the myth, welded together in America's imagination. When audiences pictured the frontier, they pictured John Wayne. And when they pictured Wayne, they saw that lever-action Winchester. By the time the Duke rode off for the last time, the rifle had already become an icon. That made it famous. When Hollywood rewrote history. By the late 50s, even television was inventing new versions of the Winchester. Steve McQueen's Wanted, Dead or Alive introduced the mare's leg, a chopped-down Winchester 1892 short enough to holster. It was never carried across the frontier, but it carried the spirit of it. It was never meant for real life. It was built for legend. But on camera, it was unforgettable. McQueen could draw it like a pistol and fire it like a rifle. It looked unique, modern, cool, and it sold the idea that Winchester had built a weapon for every kind of hero, even the ones Hollywood made up. Behind the scenes, the prop masters knew the secret. The real frontier favored the heavy, slow-loading Henrys and Spencers, but those jammed and smoked under studio lights. The Winchester 1892, built decades after the frontier closed, cycled cleanly, ejected fast, and looked beautiful on film. It became Hollywood's go-to rifle simply because it worked every time. From John Ford's Stagecoach to Wayne's True Grit, nearly every frontier Winchester was that same 1892 model, polished and reused from one picture to the next. When color television arrived, prop houses kept using the same rifles. The 1892 appeared in Bonanza, the Rifleman, Gunsmoke, Rawhide, a single design standing in for an entire century of history. The real West had a dozen rifles. Hollywood had one. The mare's leg lived on for decades, resurfacing in Supernatural, Firefly, even The Mandalorian. Collectors still buy them because the Winchester isn't just a gun, it's an American icon, brought to life by Hollywood's golden age. But by the 1970s, the Western was fading. Vietnam had changed how Americans saw violence. Watergate changed how they saw heroes. But the Winchester didn't die. In 1990, Tom Selleck's Quigley Down Under tried to bring the real guns of the frontier back, the heavy, accurate Sharps rifle. Yet even there, the villains carried Winchesters. The legend was too big to ignore. Hollywood had hardwired it into the American mind. But what really armed the frontier? Not just the Winchester, and not only the men who carried it on film, but the dream they represented. The truth behind the legend. Step away from the screen, and the story shifts. The real frontier wasn't won by one rifle. Settlers used whatever worked. Spencers, Henrys, Remingtons, Springfields, whatever they could afford or carry. However, one gun would become America's favorite, one that would rise above the rest. Not by war or conquest, but by the way it made people feel. Winchester's model, 1873, arrived 8 years after the Civil War, just as America was learning how to rebuild itself. Its design was smooth, its action reliable, and its craftsmanship unmatched. The later model 1892, the rifle that Hollywood would immortalize, came as the frontier was closing, but the dream of it lived on. When directors and prop masters needed a rifle that looked as bold and timeless as the West itself, they reached for the Winchester. It cycled cleanly, never jammed, and caught the light just right. You could spin it, reload it, and it always looked heroic doing it. That is why it became the rifle of the silver screen, not just for how it fired, but for how it felt. A rifle that began as an invention of industry became a symbol of identity. It became the gun that didn't just win the West, it won America's heart. The weapon America believed in. Maybe that's the real power of the Winchester. Not what it did, but what we needed it to mean. A symbol of grit, of nostalgia, of the heroes we still wish we could be. The Winchester never conquered the frontier. It gave people a way to feel like they were part of it, that wild, untamed country where courage still mattered and legend still lived. The next time that lever snaps shut, let it take you back to a time when courage, craftsmanship, and hope still rang across the American frontier. I'm Rowan, and this is OTRA Legends. If you've enjoyed uncovering this story, keep the legend alive. Explore the rest of our tales from America's past. Until next time, happy hunting.